Hello, and welcome to Let's Talk About It, where we bring guests and topics from near and far right to you. I am your host, Januari McKay. Thank you for tuning in. My guests today are Prince George's County Council members Blegay, Krystal Oriadha, and Tom Dernoga. Stay tuned, and we'll be right back. Hello, and welcome to Let's Talk About It, where we bring guests and issues from near and far right to you. My guests today are Prince George's County Council members Blegay from District 6, Krystal Oriadha from District 7, and Tom Dernoga from District 1. One of the main functions of the County Council is to serve as the District Council on zoning and land use matters. I understand that on April 10th, you all hosted a town hall on bringing the community voice into development. There were almost 300 people who participated in the virtual town hall, and we'd like to share that information with our audience today. So a lot of residents in Prince George's County have questions about how do I add my voice to the development and the building that is happening in our community. And so we should share with them, what opportunities are there for community members to have a say in what is being built in the community.
Well, thank you so much for your question, January. I just want to say this. I've been less than 2 years on the council, and for this position, honestly, it's been an eye-opener. I'm Councilwoman Blegay, for those that don't know me. And we did have a town hall on April 10th, and one of the reasons why we had the town hall is we wanted to open the minds of the people around us. Many people have see all this development going up, and they're always saying, well, I see these little signs. What am I supposed to do with them? Am I supposed to get involved? And what we wanted people to understand is that there's only a very small window that they can get involved. Mm-hmm. And after that, pretty much the train stops. And what we're trying to do is change that. Mm-hmm. And that's why we have the ominous bill that Tom's going to talk about, and we're going to, Councilwoman Oriadha is going to talk about the master plan. But let me just start with this. When people see those signs when they're driving by, it's small, but you have to pay attention. Mm. Because the reality is that most of the planning meetings that happen, people are not there. Number one of the best ways to get involved is starting when you see a sector plan. Right now, in both Councilwoman Oriadha's in my district, they're doing the blue line sector plan. What happens is that is the one way, very few ways. He'll talk about one other way, but this is the main way that you determine the zoning. That is what people say permitted use. What people don't understand, I got this question last week. They say, well, we got gas stations everywhere. We got all this stuff everywhere. How come y'all can't stop it? The issue is that when you do zoning, when you determine what's permitted, that is where you do it at the sector plan. Once that is done, whoever buys that property, whatever is permitted use, they're allowed to put on. Mm. So you can't do it backwards. So once they get that approved plan, once they do that, they can when you put commercial, usually you don't determine what goes in each shop. It's just if it's zoned as commercial and this is permitted in commercial, they're allowed to lease it out. Mm. So people need to understand that. So that's Blue Line sector plan. That is a big part. And we're going to start one in Marlboro Pike. That is a time where you can actually say, I don't want a store in this district. I don't want industrial here. Because that determines whether you get single family houses, whether you get townhomes, whether you get a grocery store, whether you get all of that. That permitted use is right there, and people don't engage. And so we want people to understand that, number one. Number two is that once it's permitted use, when you see that sign and you get there, if that area, let's just say, is zoned for residential townhomes, you might be able to give input about traffic, about things like that. But if it is a permitted use as townhomes, it will be approved. And that's what people don't understand, because they say, well, we don't want townhomes. But if the actual zoning is permitted, there's nothing you can do to stop it. So I definitely think, now I think the question that we want people to understand is I want people to know two ways, but there are other ways. The two main ways, remember this, for anybody watching, if there's a sector plan in your district, that is probably the most active place that you can actually give input to say, here's where it should be. We don't expect you to know the zoning code. Nobody does. But to explain to our planners, here's where we should have commercial, here's where we should have residential, here's the type of residential. That is one of the biggest times. Once that shit passed, I don't think that there's much that you can do, but maybe you can give some input.
Well, while it's totally correct, the sector plan is a part of the master plan process. So a sector plan is a small master plan. So at the master plan process, you do comprehensive analysis of what should go in an area, and the public has the most input at that time. So once the zoning's been put in place as part of that, when somebody comes in to do a development project, they do a detailed site plan. And generally speaking, detailed site plan looks at how it happens, not whether it happens. So if you zone something commercial, and you thought during the master plan process you were getting a bookstore and a library, or not a library, but let's say a bookstore and a restaurant, and they come in with a tobacco shop, if it's permitted, it's permitted. And this is where you need to be at the front end, having your input into that. Now, once a master plan has gone through and somebody wants a different type of use, they can get a piecemeal rezoning just for that one property. The public has a lot of input into the rezoning process when that occurs. But the thing that people don't know, and this is one of the things we're fighting, we rarely do master plans, like once for your area, once every 15 or 20 years. And in rezoning cases, for many, many years, decades, the county councils let developers circumvent the rezoning process by doing what's called site-specific text amendments. So we don't change the zone, we just change the rules and allow stuff in the zone that should never be allowed in the zone. We've cut back on that. We fought that last year, but now a lot of the things that we fought are being taken away this year. Because I'll be brief about this, but Park and Planning wanted a bill to correct any inaccuracies in the new zoning ordinance. So there's a 290-page bill to fix it. And we had input into that, and we were fixing a lot of little things. And then the developers said, well, while we're doing that, let's take away the stuff that you guys did last year. So they're actually making it harder for citizens going forward. And we're fighting it, but at the moment we're outnumbered.
Yeah. Well, Krystal, you want to talk about the master plans, because even though you have one of the smaller, more developed community than we have the sprawl, and you have the smaller community. I do think that more denser communities.
Yeah, like one of the issues I think, especially for elected officials, like we're in this position and we talk to the community, say, come out, be engaged, be part of these master plans. And then we say, here's our goal, right? So we talk about like the 2035 plan and plans that we've had in place as a county. And we say, this is what we're going to strive to do. The reality is that we can always check ourselves to say, are we meeting the goals that we put for ourselves? Are we meeting the goals that we promised our community when we passed these plans? And the reality is that we have not been doing that, and we're going to continue to not do it unless we make really big, drastic changes to the process. So right now, if we think about it, we had goals around how we wanted to develop in tiers. We had centers, rural tier, and like the transit-oriented development, right? Like my district is 99% transit-oriented development. And we could have said, we want to reduce all of the development in the rural tier, and we want to really focus on transit-oriented development. Well, then let's see, did that happen? And when we look at the data, it shows that we're not meeting those goals. We've been seeing higher numbers of development that's sprawl, higher numbers of development that's outside of the centers, and less development inside of the Beltway and next to our transit-oriented development. And so one of the things we always tell people is that we're not against development, right? We want to see development, but we want to see smart development. We want to see the development that was promised to our residents and our community, the type of development that makes sense. And so the changes that we're making won't stop it, because we understand that there's a shortage when it comes to housing, right? We hear this conversation all the time. We're behind when it comes to how much housing we need. But part of it is, well, where do we need the housing? It doesn't make sense to put the housing far away from transportation. We had a hearing today around the health disparities and impact. Transportation was in the top 3 issues of why there's a huge disparity in health. And so if we continue to develop in areas that do not have access to transportation, all we're doing is exacerbating the problem that currently exists. And so part of, I think, the rub with the community, and to Councilmember Blegay's point, is that they can come out and they can participate in these sector plans and participate in building these master plans. But where the rubber also meets the road is holding the elected officials accountable to actually enacting the recommendations that come into the plan. And so that's really what we've been trying to do, is bring to fruition all of the plans that have been put in place. And like Councilmember Dernoga said, not constantly find the loopholes with text amendments or workarounds so that developers can just continue to put whatever they want into communities. It's what do we have to do to get what we really want? And we have to be intentional about it.
And let me just add this. There's some things that she talked about that people should be aware of. Number one, when it comes to, she talks about the Plan 2035. Plan 2035, and I put out a whole PowerPoint about this. The goal of Plan 2035 was to create more transit-oriented walkable communities. And that even means in my district, which is a little bit of the outskirts around the Inner Beltway communities. We wanted to create walkable, like we're looking at downtown Largo. We want a community where you can literally get up, walk outside, and actually go to different places, create downtowns. Montgomery County has done a great job of this. If you think about Montgomery County, you could at least think of 4 downtowns in Montgomery County: Silver Spring, Bethesda, Gaithersburg, Rockville. You can actually think about all of those. And what they've done is, and that's how they've actually been able to build. If you think about it, all of their commercial centers are around those downtown centers. We don't have that in Prince George's County. If you ask somebody, where is our downtown in Prince George's County? No one, people are kind of like, maybe Hyattsville, not really sure. So what we want people to do, what we want to do is build that, because that's actually the best way that we can get the retail. Everyone in my community wants a Trader Joe's or Whole Foods. Trader Joe's and Whole Foods puts themselves near very high density centers. So what we've done in Prince George's County is that we build out and not around. So we have housing communities, small here, small there, small there. So now all those housing communities came, and then now I want a Trader Joe's, but the density in our community is 3,000 houses. So you're not going to get a Trader Joe's. And then the next 3,000 houses is down the street, around the corner, and down to 10 roads, 10 stops. So what we told people is that we put this together because we feel like this is the best way to get the retail. But the developers are not quite agreeing with that. They still want to do it, the 3,000 communities here and there. So that's why we actually have been pushing against the tax amendments, because the tax amendments has been a way to go around the plan. So, okay, we have centers. We did centers in District 6, Westphalia, one in District 9, Brandywine. You have downtown Largo. So, but then we're getting townhouse requests in the middle of Bowie somewhere. We're getting it in the middle of Upper Marlboro, far away from Largo, Westphalia. And what we're saying is that, no, bring it to Largo, bring it to Westphalia, because that's where we need it, not in the outskirts. And so that's actually hurting us, and people need to understand that's hurting our retail.
It's also hurting our budget.
Wow.
When you build this type of housing far from transit centers, okay, you put more people on the roads, which affects people's quality of life. And this is one of the things people complain about all the time. So where you're affecting their quality of life, at the same time, you're also creating infrastructure needs that you can't afford to pay for. That it's been demonstrated for 40, 50 years that type of development costs more money than it provides. So when we have a budget deficit and we keep doing the same thing over and over again, the only people benefiting are the development community folks. And this keeps piling up and piling up. And we've got several $7 billion backlog in deferred school maintenance. We've got fire stations, police stations that can't be built, haven't been built. And when you look at our bonding capacity as a county, we have a limit. Well, we've hit the limit. Okay, so where do you find the money to take care of these infrastructure needs? And number one, it's really difficult, especially right now, to do it. But then when we're looking at each other going, we all know this. Every council member knows this. So why do we keep approving the same thing that we saw approved 10 and 20 years ago that doesn't make sense economically? And we don't have an answer for why people do it.
Right.
But this is what the council's done for forever. And you'd think we learn from our mistakes.
Yeah. So I have a question. How is it that the developers are able to influence what the master plan is supposed to do?
I'll start with that, and I know, Tom, you've been around the block a little bit longer.
Well, I want to change the question. Everybody gets input into the master plan. It's when the master plan's done that they have the influence into
manipulate it.
around the
Right.
master
Yes,
plan.
that's
Yes, you said it.
it. Exactly.
And I feel like it's a couple of things, right? I mean, we just have to be honest about the situation when it comes to politics, right? You have a lot of people that are serving in office that have other aspirations, and money is entrenched in politics. And if we look at fundraising, it's a huge reason why I think developers have a hold over Prince George's County. And I would just say industry, period, has a hold over politics. I don't even think that is just something for Prince George's County.
It's everywhere.
It's everywhere. And it's the reality is because people feel like they need the money to run. And, we've already heard that there's going to be a lot of money put against us when we run next term because we are very independent about focusing on what's best for our community. And sometimes that's going to align with the developer, and sometimes it's not. Because the reality is we just want what's best for our community. If you want to just bring trash to my community and me take anything, like you want me to take storage facilities everywhere because that is one of the highest growing industries because it has such a quick return on profit. So a lot of developers want to do it, but we made it so it's harder to do it in just like all of our commercial spaces because no one wants to see when they were promised grocery stores and restaurants, storage facility after storage facility popping up in their community, right? So that's part of it. And I think the other part of it is the idea that a lot of people believe what the developers say over everything. Like if they say, well, we can't do that. The market doesn't yield that. We need this. That they just take it at face value, right? They don't believe that we can demand anything more than what we're getting. And they really have believed this fear that if we don't take what they're offering, we'll get nothing. And I think that's really the tension point because we feel like it's okay to have standards. It's okay for us to say, we don't want every development in our community. And I think some of our colleagues might feel like, well, if we don't take that, we're gonna get nothing. And so I think we have to really hold strong and create standards for our community. I don't think it'll be a tension point and it'll be an adjustment, but it'll be worth it because that's why certain communities, when we look at neighboring jurisdictions, are treated differently because they demand it from developers. And I don't think we demand the same.
25 years ago, former council member Walter Maloney said that the county council does not have the word no in its vocabulary. 25 years ago.
And I'm actually, honestly, it's surprising some of the culture there. There was, and I would say, I feel like we put together a good team to say like the culture has to change, that the developer couldn't control. In my district, we were impacted by tax amendments. We had a tax amendment in Westphalia where the council member changed the zoning from commercial to industrial. Which would allow a warehouse in a place that never informed anyone, and they found out through the Business Journal. We had a text amendment in a part of near an airport where it was changed to allow 700 townhomes in a place that really shouldn't even have over 100 homes. We had a possible change that almost happened where they were going to change to put 300 apartments across the street from a senior community. And what happened is the senior community raised up. But that actually opened the door because people actually ask the first question you have, when can we voice our opinions? Because the idea is that a text amendment, and a planning person actually said this, they said a text amendment destroys everything because it goes against every plan. Because that means that if you have to legislatively change the zoning, you're going against the plan that's been set. That has the input of the community, that has the input of the developer, that has the input of the business community. So actually, that's opened us up to where we have a problem today. That's why 300 plus people were on the call, because as people started to watch this, they got nervous and they started to say, well, what can we do to make sure that our zoning does not change in the middle of the night? Well, first of all, we changed the law last year to make it hard to pass the text amendment. And I told people, not only did we do, a couple hundred repeals of text amendments?
No, a couple dozen.
Couple dozen, it was a couple dozen of repeals. But also what I told people is like, I'm not passing any text amendments, because at this point, I don't want the community, if you want to do a rezoning in my district, you got to go through the process. Because you got to, if you want to put a rezoning application forward, go through the process, because that process ensures that even if it's permitted, at least people are able to see what's going on.
Yeah, the other thing that we did last year was to put in a provision that people have wanted forever, that says when you come with a detailed site plan, it should be consistent with the local master plan. Developers don't want that. It's like, well, why do we do these master plans? We spend over $1 million on every master plan or sector plan, and then we don't follow them. So we put this bill in last year, CB3, and in the omnibus bill that we're doing this year to fix the little things, well, the developers have gotten the county council to take that out of the law. So that law has not been passed yet, but that's what's in front of folks, is that they're one opportunity in a detailed site plan to say, whoa, time out, this is not consistent with what we all agreed to 10 years ago. County council wants to take that away from the public. And that, like I said, that's the one real opportunity left. Once you get past zoning and you get to detailed site plan, you're talking about what color's the paint, how tall is the shrubbery. You're not talking about, is it a Starbucks or is it a Morton Steakhouse. But so your one opportunity is to raise consistency with the master plan, and the developers want that ripped out of the law. And right now, the county council is going to let them do it.
So how do our residents, how do our neighbors fight back? You call your council member?
We should talk about CB15.
Right, well, the omnibus bill is CB15, so it just came out of the Planning Housing Committee 2 weeks ago. It has not been introduced. It will be introduced next week or the week after, and then it'll go to public hearing probably in early or mid-July. And people can contact their council member and express they don't want to lose their rights to participate. And I think a lot of the council members, and I saw this on text amendments a couple of years ago before you were on the council. Oh, but you get a hearing. Right, but it's a hearing in which I can't talk about anything important. So how does that help me as a citizen? I can go to a hearing and I can talk about things like, I want it to be red, not yellow. Or I want this kind of shrubbery versus that kind of shrubbery. No, I want to go say, I don't want you to do what you're doing because it's not right. Well, that's being taken away from them. And the council members need to be asked, why would you do that to me? Why would you do that to your public? We voted you in, but you're not. You don't want us to be engaged in the process.
And I think another issue with what they're trying to do is make it so they can continuously use the old zoning ordinance, and that's really troubling to me. I feel like we put you, right? Before our time, you all put so much money.
That was before my time too.
Oh, right. Money, resources into saying, how can we make this better? We understand that it's flawed, it's old, we need a newer system. Okay, now we roll it out. And I understand you give a little time to adjust. Now they're trying to extend it another, 2 years.
It's already been 6 years.
And so it goes back to this issue about asking the community to engage, and then they feel like they've been bamboozled. They feel like they've been lied to. What was the point of them engaging in this new zoning process? What was the point of them giving all their ideas if we're just going to hold off just because the developers don't want it? So it's like, it doesn't matter what the residents think, the people that live in these communities, the people that voted all of us into office. The people that hold the most value are the people that don't live here, because majority of the developers don't live here and majority of their lobbyists don't live here, but they hold the most weight and they're holding off progress, and they say that there's some flaws and we need to fix it. I argue we can't even see really what the flaws are if you're using two systems. Like if we just stopped and we use the new zoning ordinance, it's law. We always have the flexibility to adjust it, but we really can't even see what works if we don't have people using the system.
And I wanted to actually make sure people understand. When they talk about old versus new, people need to understand the process actually started in 2014. There were a series of meetings done for 8 years. They did not approve the new zoning ordinance until 2021. 8 years of meetings, of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars to our planning, engagement meetings with the community, engagement meetings with developers. So when people say the old versus the new, I wanted people to understand that there was efforts made to engage people so that we could have a zoning process, because they said it needed to be updated after 50 years. Even the developers complained. And then now that it's been updated, now we have people, we actually have developers following the new zoning ordinance, so we can't have those that feel entitled to go back to the old. So, and the new zoning ordinance does put some process in place that helps the community's voice get active. So we definitely want people to understand that, because I know many people didn't understand the old versus the new. When did this start? So people need to understand that the new zoning ordinance didn't just come in a day.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
8 years.
Yeah, and with the way it works is the developers get their choice of using the old or the new. So they're picking the choice that works best for them.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the old zoning ordinance, what I dealt with as a citizen, as a lawyer for citizens, it was not great for citizens. The new zoning ordinance actually cut back on citizen rights. So a lot of people were unhappy about the new zoning ordinance. But then last year we put the changes in to make it more usable. So actually, you went from being a not so good old ordinance to the citizens getting further cut out in the new ordinance to us fixing it. Not entirely, but making it better for citizens. And that's the one thing that they want to take away through the CB15 zoning omnibus correction bill. But it's kind of crazy. Like my colleague said, you had all these years of working on getting the new ordinance in place. There was a phase-in period, and it was supposed to stop April 1st. And now the developers are like, no, we want to continue this for several more years. Plus, if you've already developed under the old ordinance, you get to keep what you're doing for either 10 or 20 years under the old ordinance. So the more people that can get to use the old ordinance for the next 2 years, that's more things that are going to continue going forward. So one of the arguments was, well, we want to simplify things for citizens or for everybody. Well, it's not that simple if you have to now know 2 different zoning ordinances.
Right.
And you need to know this for the next 10 or 20 years. So what is simple about that?
Right.
I would like to thank you all for coming out today and helping our community understand the importance of how our combined voices affect the issues such as land use, and how important our voices are to that. And so thank you so much, and thank you for your work, your continuous effort to fight for the people of Prince George's County. Let's Talk About It is here to communicate, educate, motivate, uplift, and inspire the world. I am Januari McKay, your host, and I'll see you next time on Let's Talk About It.